Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Gonna do something I've never done. I take that back. I might have done it one time before, quite a few years ago, but we're installing stain grade split jamb doors. About can't spit it out. Stain grade split jamb doors. Typically, whenever you're doing any kind of stain grade door install, you're just gonna have a flat jamb on your pre-hung doors. And then after you install the door and jamb, you're gonna go back afterwards and install all the casing. These are pre-cased stain grade split jambs. And I actually had some reasoning why I went ahead and did this. This is a little bit of an experiment for me. I wanted to share it with you in this video. Before we get too far into the video, sometimes I get a little bit ahead of myself and don't explain things for people who aren't professional carpenters. What is a split jamb exactly? A split jamb is a door that's gonna have the jamb split in half. So as you see right here, I've got one side of this door installed already, and then this is actually the other half. There are some advantages to this. I've covered in other videos, one being they're pretty fast to install. They come with the casing already applied, and they give you some interesting flexibility whenever you're installing these, which is why I opted to go with this style of door. So if we come up here, you can see I've pre-shimmed all these openings with my Jam Master, which I've talked about in past videos, and I've got this half of the door installed. Then we've got basically two pieces of the jamb, and this is going to slide into this groove on the inside of the jamb here. So if I can go ahead and pop this in, the other side of the jamb installs super fast, as easy as that. Just put it in place and nail it off. One of the questions that I've gotten quite a bit as people have watched me use the Jam Master over the years is, does the Jam Master work with split jamb doors? And actually it works amazingly well. I love installing split jamb doors with the Jam Master. So as we're coming around here, we've got a couple openings. First off, this is your standard rough opening, and you'll notice all of these shims that are glued and routed already. This is essentially what a pre-shimmed opening looks like. And this is, I've shown this before in other videos. The Jam Master does all this. Why is it important with split jambs? Whenever you have a split jamb, it's not as strong as a flat jamb because the structure of the wood has a break in the center of it. So in theory, it could bend. Whenever you have a perfectly shimmed opening, you can essentially just pop the split jamb doors in place and you nail them off, and there's really not much to it. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, than using traditional tapered shims. If you haven't seen me use this Jam Master on any of my other videos, be sure to check those out. We'll maybe link a few of them in the video description, but essentially it's this big apparatus that has templates. You use it with blocks and a router to perfectly shim an opening so everything is perfectly parallel and your doors hang perfectly. That was a lot of perfect, but the Jam Master really is a tool that gives you perfection in all of your door hangs. So here's my logic, guys. As many of you know, whenever you install doors, you want your miters on top to be perfect, and the best way to achieve that is to have your jamb material flush up here on your top corners. Sometimes whenever walls are out of plumb, you have to move your jamb in and out in order to make your door close properly and make contact with the door stop. Now, that being said, we know we want our top of our jamb to be in line and flush on both sides to have good miters. Generally, you don't want to mess with that too much. That means that we move down lower to make our adjustments. Now with a standard flat jamb, you're fixed on your width. So I've got a 4 9/16 board here. If I have my wall out of plumb and it's cross-legged, that means I have to move this jamb in or out in order for the door to close properly. To give you a visual of what I'm talking about, we have our door stop, which goes all the way around. If we have a cross-leg situation, That means that the wall is not in plane, and we've got one side of our jamb legs are gonna be out of plumb, which is not going to allow the door to make even contact the whole way with this stop. What we want to happen is when we close the door, we want it to have nice, consistent contact the entire length of the door. Now, in order to achieve that consistent contact, we have to be able to move our door in and out sometimes in order to make that contact with the door and the door stop. Now, on this house, we've got a stain grade casing and jamb install. That means you can't rely on caulking to fill any gaps or anything like that. This is our casing, as you already saw in some of the other clips. So we want this to be nice and tight along our jamb. We don't have any forgiveness with caulk along here, and we also don't have any forgiveness on the back side of this casing here. So essentially, if I have a situation where my rough opening is cross-legged and I need to move this flat jamb out, I'm in trouble because I don't have any way to make up for that. And that's where the split jambs come in. They give you a lot more flexibility down here on the lower side of your door during installation to make up any discrepancies that you have. So here we've got one side of my split jamb installed, and I want to show you why this is important and why I wanted to have this ability and margin for error on one side of the door here. On this house, the architect specified that he wanted the casing and baseboard to be the same thickness. So whenever you put these together, you're gonna really see all of the details. Now, I pretty much vetoed this idea during the design meeting and said we need to have some kind of a break right here. And I'll talk about that more in another video. We're gonna have a rabbet detail here, but this still needs to be in plane as much as possible. The issue is whenever you're installing doors, if you got a cross-legged situation and your jamb gets pushed out either proud of the drywall or instead of the drywall, that's gonna cause your casing to be tilted and it's gonna look like garbage whenever you butt your baseboard up to that. We wanna keep this in plane as much as possible, and that's gonna look really good. Installing these doors, whenever you're installing split jambs, you still, on one side of the door, you still need to try and get things plumb, and you're still gonna have to deal with the opening that you have. However, on the other side of the door, you have a lot of margin for error, so it's gonna give you a lot of forgiveness if you have situations where you've got proud drywall. Let me just show you real quick as we come around here. I'm gonna pop this side of the door in place, but I wanna show you how much margin for error you have. So we'll push our top in place, but as we come down here, let's say our drywall was kicked out for some reason, we've got a bad framing situation. I'm gonna go ahead and put a line on the wood right here with the jamb inserted all the way. And you'll see as I pull this out, I've got about a 1/2 inch of margin for error. So if my drywall is way proud, I've got that much room for error and adjustability. And actually, if it would let me, I could even probably go in about that far, much further inward as well. Hopefully that all makes sense and you can understand a little bit of our goal and the logic with going with the split jambs here. I really wanted that extra flexibility. I even made this little jig here so that I can see the way my casing is sitting on the wall. Again, we want this casing, the face of it, to be perfectly parallel with our wall. So I went ahead and made a 5/8 inch cutout of this board, which is the thickness of our baseboard. And you can see here that it sits nicely the whole way across here. What we don't want is for this to be crooked. If we would have went with traditional solid flat jambs, I would have had a lot more of the jambs being proud of the drywall, which would have caused the casing to be tilted or crooked, and it just wouldn't have worked as well. Because we went with the flat jambs, in a situation like this on the closet door, it's swinging in. I was able to install the other side of the split jamb and get this casing absolutely perfect with almost no effort. So you just get a lot more forgiveness for a stain grade installation like this. Now let's talk about the cons a little bit. It's not all pros, and there's a reason that most people associate split jambs with poor quality. A lot of that comes down to the door shop that is actually hanging the door slabs onto the jambs. In my case, I've worked with the same lumber company for years, the same lumber yard, and they actually get the door slabs and then they hang the doors on the jambs themselves. They've got their own door shop. We've had issues over the years, but for the most part, they do a really good job. However, I was very nervous on this job in terms of what the miters were actually gonna look like. It was a little bit of a gamble ordering split jambs, but I was actually really happy with how everything turned out. So I wanna highlight a few things, some of the cons in ordering the split jambs. First off, the casing obviously is pre-applied. That means I have no control over what that looks like. It's on them to choose what pieces they install. If it's got a ding in it, a knot in it, so on and so forth, that's up to them on whether they put that on the door or not. Now you'll see right here, up top here, I've got this piece of casing, we've got our miters. Over here, looks great, that'll stain up just fine, miter looks fantastic. As we move over here, we get into that purple color that you can get with poplar. Ideally, it would have been nice if they wouldn't have used this piece because we have a big contrast between these two pieces in terms of color. We've also got a little bit of a nick right here. That obviously was me because that's drywall dust, but that tends not to happen whenever you're using flat jamb doors and the trim carpenter is applying the casing on site. You can watch out for some of those things a little bit more. Now the other con, and it might not necessarily be a con depending on how your door shop does their miters, these miters could have been done really poorly. As you see here, I haven't touched these. Everything looks really good. They're cut at the correct angle. Everything is flush. It looks great. That's what we want. I've got to say I was extremely impressed with how all of the miters looked on this door package. They did a fantastic job. The way this door shop is doing their mitered casing now, they use metal cleats on the backside that are at a right angle. I actually don't know what they're called, but they smash a bunch of these cleats into the backside of the miter, joins it together really well. Help me out in the comments if you know what that's called. I'm drawing a complete blank, but there is no glue in these joints, but it really does a nice job of keeping things together. Now on a paint grade installation, if you have expansion and contraction across this joint, you'll get that ugly hairline crack, and that's not something we want. Actually though, with stain grade installation, because it's stain grade, we really don't have to worry about that as much. It's not gonna be noticeable. This is a very small casing profile. It's only 2.5 inches wide by 5/8 of an inch thick, which means there's not gonna be a ton of expansion and contraction the way there would be with a really large casing. I know some people will not agree with that, but I think it's gonna be fine in this case, and I'm happy with how things are going together. A lot of you guys work in different parts of the country, or I know a lot of my Canadian friends have to bore their own handle sets, and you're mortising your own hinges and hanging your own doors on the job site. That's something I've actually never done in my market. This is pretty typical. But just to highlight a few things, I've mentioned already, these were a 10-week special order custom door. They look nice. This is a very modern design home, so we've got a dado across here. You'll notice if you look at all of these hinges, they did a nice job of mortising them flush. They're even, which makes it easier for me to hang the doors and get them just right. So I want to segue a little bit here and give you some tips on installing doors for stain grade installations, just some things to think about that are different than paint grade. Now I say the difference between stain grade and paint grade, you guys know me, I'm pretty OCD, and as a general rule, I try to install my paint grade work as if it's stain grade anyways. But what does that even mean? With paint grade, obviously you have the ability to use caulking. So if you've got a gap, you always have that forgiveness. Whenever you're doing a stain grade installation, if my casing is sitting off of my jamb right here, I can't fill that with caulking. So you have to be more proactive on keeping things tight. The other thing is that with stain grade, you're gonna fill your nail holes with a color matched putty typically, and it's not as easy to hide as obviously paint grade nail holes are. So you wanna be a little bit more strategic with your nail holes and a little bit more careful with the way you're driving your nails. That being said, I always try to be careful with how I'm driving my nails anyways. I don't want to leave any more holes than I have to, and I don't want to leave any bigger hole than I have to. The bigger question for a lot of people with stain grade installs is what size nail should you use whenever you need some holding power? In my opinion, I still like to use a 15 gauge nail. Typically, I always carry 18 gauge and 15 gauge nails. I don't get into 16 gauge very much. One of the main reasons is just simply because it starts to be a ton of fasteners to carry around all the time and keep stocked. I feel like if you shoot a 15 gauge nail properly, it's still a very small hole. The issue is whenever people overdrive their nails, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So in general, your nail hole should be the same size as your nail head. What you don't want is to allow your nail gun to shoot the drive pin too far in, and if you do that, it's going to leave a wide slot and it can double the size of the nail hole. With stain grade, that's going to be extremely ugly. You do not want to do that. So there's two things you need to know whenever you're nailing stain grade trim. One, if you're using air, you want to have your air pressure dialed in correctly. Number two, how you hold the gun matters. Whenever you're shooting your nail gun, you can adjust the depth that your nail is going to go in based on how you angle your gun. Ideally, you want to set the depth of your gun as if you're shooting straight on here, but if I angle this upward, maybe if we come around here a little bit, you'll notice if I angle this upward, what's happening? The driver on my nail gun is going to go much further in. You'll see how much closer this gets right here. You'll see this nail right here. I shot this yesterday. It's a nice sized hole. The hole is basically the same size as the nail head. Now watch what happens if I tilt. I'm going to come up here midway. We're going to commit a sin. I'm going to tilt this up. Now look at that hole. It's twice the size because my drive pin went in too far. So you've got that compared to that. It's a sin to do that. You should never do that. You shouldn't be running your nail guns with too much air pressure or just blasting holes in trim like that because it looks terrible. Unfortunately, I've went into houses that other guys have trimmed and literally every hole that they put in is 2 or 3 times the size that it needs to be. On stain grade trim, you cannot do that. You need to get your nail hole size dialed in. You can still use 15 gauge nails with plenty of holding power. You just need to be mindful about how you're setting them. Tip number 2, we're filming this right now. It is the dead of winter. The high tomorrow temperature wise is 1 degree Fahrenheit. That means that the air is extremely, extremely dry. That means you're at minimum size that your door is ever going to be whenever you're installing these. Now compare that here in the Midwest to what the humidity level will be next summer. These doors are going to grow. The whole house is going to grow whenever humidity comes into the home. Even whenever the painter sprays these or paints your doors, they're going to grow. You want to keep in mind what time of year you're hanging your doors all the time. So here in the dead of winter, I want to make absolutely sure that I have at least 1/8 of an inch margin all the way around the strike side of the door. Ideally, even 5/32 works good too. Between 1/8 and 5/32 though, I like to use this little gauge. I've showed this before on my videos. I'll link this up in the video description, but this is a super handy tool to have just for checking your margins, because you can stick it in and you can see exactly what your margin is. I'm a little bit over 1/8 up here. That is typical because the door shop is limiting you on your ability to push this over, and I do find that usually it's around 1/8, not quite 5/32. But then down here, as we go lower, I'm around 5/32 the whole way. So dead of winter, make sure you've got plenty of space, because this is going to grow once humidity hits the house later in the year in the summer. Now, something you'll probably run into is you'll go to install a door and you'll find that you don't quite have as much margin up here as you want. So what do? Well, typically on my paint grade installs, I just get a little bit nasty with it. I'll get a block of wood up here and I'll break the top side of this open. The way these doors are put together, that leaves a gap. No big deal on a paint grade install because you can caulk it. With a stain grade, we don't really want to be doing that too much. So you kind of just have to hope that your door shop did their job properly and they've got everything sized appropriately. Tip number 3, I always install a screw behind the hinge on the doors, especially for split jambs. I do it for flat jambs too, but we talked a little bit already about the fact that whenever you're using a split jamb, there's not as much strength because this flat jamb doesn't continue all the way across. It's got a break in the middle. We want to make sure that this jamb is pulled tight to our hinges, not to our hinges, to our shims the whole way across. And as you'll see on this door already, I'm nice and tight the whole way down. That is really important to ensure that the door is going to function properly for the long haul. So whenever I go to hang a door, I get it in place. I'll tack it with nails. But then I want to put a screw behind every hinge. You'll notice right here, I've got a screw lined up with my shim, and that is going to ensure that this jamb is sucked tight to my shim. And because I use the Jam Master, I know that these shims are milled perfectly perpendicular with the plane of the opening. So if I get this sucked tight to that shim, I know my door is going to hang perfectly. It's going to swing perfectly. It's not going to want to pop open or anything like that. It just makes the install way better, and it ensures that you're not going to get callbacks because your doors aren't working properly. All right, we were only going to do 3 tips, but I'm going to give you a bonus 4th tip here, and that is to use a playing card down here towards your bottom shim point. Now, I've talked about this a little bit in a past video, and that is the subject of hinge slop in your hinges. These are not ball-bearing hinges. The way the door hangs, it's always going to want to compress down towards the bottom. That means your margin down here on this inside of the door is always going to be tighter. So one thing that I've found over the years as I've installed hundreds, if not thousands of split jamb doors, is that I like to put a playing card here at this top hinge. And what that does is it just brings this part of the door out slightly. That opens up this area down here. We don't want the door to be binding on the bottom of this side of the jamb, and that can happen because of the pressure that is down here with the hinge slop. The margin right here is always going to be less. So I've found over the years, if I take a playing card and I fold it into thirds, I like to insert it right here on the top side of this hinge behind where my bottom hinge is going to be, basically, so top of the bottom hinge. I'm probably confusing you, but you can see what I'm talking about. You put that in right here, and that's going to open this up. and it's gonna make your margin over here better also typically if you are using the Jam Master. Whenever you hang a door, you know you've hung it well when your margins are perfect and whenever you can close the door and it stays perfectly closed and it doesn't spring open. So that little trick right there ensures that I don't have pressure at the bottom of the door. If we go around here, you'll notice on all of these doors, I actually have this little playing card trick done on each one of these. And it's just something that I've found over the years, it makes a big difference. To illustrate a little bit what we're trying to do, whenever I close this door, see I've got perfect margins all the way around. But if I don't put this playing card in, what happens right here is this space will be tight. Maybe not a big deal. The door probably will still operate just fine, but what can happen is that can cause a pinch to happen right here, and that'll make your door want to spring open. It won't close perfectly like we want. So add that playing card in there. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference in the way your doors hang. One of the questions that I get a lot is, how long does it take you to install doors with the Jam Master? Does it actually save time? And then another question that would be pretty common would be, what's the time difference on installing split-jamb doors versus flat-jamb? So there's a couple things there. Number one, the Jam Master, I don't feel really saves me time. It saves me a lot of mental energy because it's so easy to use once you've got it mastered to pre-shim all of your openings and have them perfect and just be able to pop your doors into place and not have to worry about twisted cripples and whatnot. That's the real advantage. For me, if I was really just banging in, slapping in doors, I could probably actually go faster with traditional shimming, but I don't like to do that because I like perfection. I like not having callbacks to come back and fix doors, and I just like the fact that I'm giving the customer the best product possible. So as best I can tell, I probably install doors about the same speed with the Jam Master versus traditional tapered shims. There's not much difference for me. The second part of the question on speed of installing doors with split jambs is, how much faster are split jambs? They're way faster in my opinion. I can install split jambs pretty fast. You have to consider, for me, it takes me about the same amount of time to install a split jamb as it does a traditional flat jamb door that doesn't have the casing on it. But then I have the whole other step of having to cut all my casing, pre-assemble it, nail it on, move it around. It's quite a bit more time. That's the advantage of split jambs and why a lot of your more production-oriented builders use the split jambs. On paint grade houses, I like to use flat jambs because it allows me to do my own miters on the doors and ensure that we've got joinery and glue, that these joints aren't gonna break. But sometimes we still do install the split jambs, and it's not the end of the world. They have their place. It's just about understanding the nuances of them. The whole video, the reason I wanted to make this was because most people would automatically think, oh, there's no way you should put a split jamb in a high-end home. And I wanted to do it on this stain grade application, and I think I'm actually getting a superior result versus if I would have used flat jambs. So a couple of things to consider. Number one, the only reason this works is because the door shop did a great job on hanging these doors and on their miters. No, we didn't get perfect color matches all the way around, but for the most part, they did a great job. You might not have access to that in your market. Another thing I want to mention, over the years, as I've kind of fought with builders on trying to get away with split jambs for paint grade doors, is unfortunately the door shop that I work with, they apply their casing so cheap that I couldn't compete with it from a price standpoint. I mean, they were basically charging a fourth of what I would to apply the casing onto the door. So for a large part of my career, I had to install split jambs just for that reason, because I couldn't compete with the cost. I hope this video has helped you guys out. I want to wrap this video up with the biggest tip of the video, and it's a saying that I live by and I've found to be true for a long time. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The most important thing that I do for my door installations is I come through before drywall stage with a sledgehammer. I come through with my level and I get all of these openings perfectly plumb, and I adjust them myself and get them as close to perfect as possible. That makes it so much easier to get things to look good at this stage of the game, and it ensures that I'm not having to install a flat jamb door a ½ inch off of the drywall in order to make it close properly. I've already been through with my sledgehammer and my level. I've plumbed all these doors, so they're all basically within plus or minus an 1/8 inch tolerance. It's very easy to work with that. The biggest tip I can give you is to do that, especially on a stained grade house, because you do not have the caulking to give you forgiveness. So that's huge. It's made a big difference for me over the years. On a house like this, it's really important. So hope you guys have found this video helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you install stained grade split jamb doors? Do you see the benefit or don't you? I do. I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.